listen to this because there is a stack of the most famous guitar riffs ever recorded in this song. See if you can pick them as we welcome Deep Blue.
Good evening to everyone present here tonight. My name is Brian and I'll be your host for tonight. On behalf of the JPO family, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone tuning in for tonight's broadcast. We hope that everyone is doing well and staying safe indoors. A friendly reminder to maintain good hygiene at all times and maintain social distancing when heading out. As we'd like to continue improving your experience with us, please help us achieve this by completing the poll that will be published during this broadcast. To anyone who is interested in sharing tonight's broadcast, a live feed is being shared on the JPO YouTube channel. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to type them out in the Q&A section down below. For those of you joining us on YouTube, please type your questions down in the YouTube live chat down below. A recording of the webinar will also be uploaded onto the channel. Today's seminar features Evan Setiawan, with his topic being a cross-genre musician, the pros and cons of a traditional classical path versus the contemporary path. Evan Setiawan is a professional violinist, teacher, composer, stilt walking performer, and multi-instrumentalist. He was born in the island of Java in Indonesia. In 1998, during the Southeast Asian financial crisis, he was sponsored by an Australian family to immigrate to Queensland. Soon after the move, he started to learn the violin. When he was 17, he was awarded the Norman Miller Violin Award from the city of Toowoomba. He is the lead violinist of the Deep Blue Orchestra. He's also the principal violinist at the Harmony Music Centre and the string coordinator at Coomera Anglican College. In 2007, after completing his Bachelor of Music with honours in the University of Queensland, he joined the Deep Blue Orchestra. Together with them, he has performed all across Australia, Asia, and the USA. Some notable past performances include entertaining world leaders and heads of states, including his own current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, the Australian state leaders, and the Governor General of Australia. Internationally, he has performed for the presidents of Vietnam and Taiwan, as well as our own Sultan of Malaysia. Other notable performances include the 2008 Adelaide Music Festival, the 2009 Malaysia Food Festival, the 2010 Shanghai World Expo, and the 2018 Gold Coast Commonwealth Games Arts Festival, to name a few. One of his more recent performances was for the ABC live broadcast of the Australian of the Year Award on national television in January 2020. Aside from his accomplishments with the orchestra, he has played, collaborated, and recorded for various film soundtracks, artists, and bands. In 2007, together with his classical piano trio ensemble, he won the 4MBS or 4 Music Broadcast Station Chamber Music Award. He actively plays in many ensembles and was a violinist in musical theatre productions such as Cats, Fiddler on the Roof, and Into the Woods. In 2013, he was selected as a judge for the Brisbane division of The Voice of China. On weekends, he directs the music and band at his local church. So, as our JPO family attendees are mostly students, ranging from primary school to college, their parents and their teachers, the sharing of knowledge and advice here for all of us tonight is invaluable and greatly appreciated. The JPO is very honored to have Evan join in as our guest for tonight. I hope that you all join me in giving him a warm welcome. Without further ado, once again, a very good evening to Evan Setiawan. Hey there, Evan. Hello, Evan. Thank you so much.
Good evening. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, the honor is ours of you joining us. So, yeah. So, to start tonight's interview, what can you tell us about the 2 videos we were watching earlier on?
Okay, so the first one was a snippet of our participation with the Orchestra Deep Blue that I performed with since I finished university and my studies at university. That's when we entered the Australian Got Talent competition in 2011. We were actually approached by them to see if we wanted to compete, and so we did, and it was such a great experience. It's nothing like we've ever done before. By then we were already doing a couple of local shows in Brisbane where we're based. But then, it just opened a whole heaps of doors. And obviously because it was, we got national broadcasts here in Australia, As you can see in the clip there, there's a lot of new kind of special tricks that they given us. So they, the people at the Australian Got Talent directors just said, would you like to fly up to the ceiling while playing the violin, and then they go, would you like to also have fire coming out of your shoes while we do that? So, it was great. I love it. And it was a memorable thing to do. I often tell people about that clip, as that's the moment that all of my childhood dreams comes together. I was on TV, I was flying, I was playing the violin. And so it was all together a great experience. The second video that was placed on there was our video clip that was commissioned for our own kind of online media presence to be on YouTube. And so that was our very first video clip that we made. And it's off a tune called Misalu, which is an Egyptian folk tune that's been made famous by Dick Dale. In the same tune has been used also by the Black Eyed Peas recently for one of their tunes. So we thought we did our own take on that, which was really fun.
All right, well, that's definitely very interesting there, Evan. Thanks for sharing all that with us. Yeah, I think I did read up that you guys actually managed to become finalists in Australia, in the Australia's Got Talent. Was that the finalist? Was that the performance for when you guys were finalists then? Or was that a different?
Correct, yes.
Oh, okay.
So that was our finalist. So we were on the final, and that was our final performance. Now, sadly, we didn't win that year. The first winner was a singer by the name of Jack Fijan, who's doing really well, and we all have great respect for him, and we wish him very well. He sings very well that day as well, and so we thought it was a really fair competition, but I think we actually got a lot out of it ourselves. So. Yeah, but that was the final round of Australia Got Talent.
Okay, yeah. I guess it would have to be because of all that spectacle, like you mentioned, like the whole flying to the ceiling and the rocket shoes and such.
Yeah, perhaps it is. Yeah, and I think also back then, I think Deep Blue, when it was started, in 2004, there was really nothing quite like it. I think these days, if you go on YouTube and you put a pop violin or pop orchestra, that you might manage to find a couple more. But back in 2005, when we started this band and we did a bit of research, there's nothing quite like it. Yeah, and so I think back then people were just wowed by the spectacle and all for everything that we actually do, and managed to do that. You've managed that we don't have a conductor, and we memorized all of our pieces, and we also do choreography. So all of that was a new experience for me, but also I think the audience really liked that as well, so which is great.
Yeah, I think you can easily see that with all the past performances, especially with the Australia's Got Talent video. So yeah, so as you mentioned earlier on, you've been a member of the Deep Blue Orchestra, as we've seen in the videos as well. So would you care to elaborate a little more on the orchestra?
Yeah, okay. So, the Deep Blue Orchestra was started in 2004 by Professor Andy Artis and Darren Clark. Basically, he was the head of music at this university, and he wanted to solve the problem of the declining attendance at orchestra in Australia. And one of the solution that he came up with was, what if we modernize the orchestra? How can we reinvent the orchestra as we know it for the 21st century audience? Now, the aim was not to sway the traditional orchestra goers, because we all have great respect, and we collaborate with the Queensland Symphony Orchestra initially. Because we know, there's already a strong support in the classical sense, but our aim was targeted to people that wouldn't necessarily go to an orchestra performance, but how would we target those people so that they would come and see? And that's why some of the research that he did then went on, it's got to be a lot more interactive, and the performer, the musician have to be a lot more engaging as well. And, how can we make this more of a spectacle not just a sit-down performance and watch, and how can we make this more visually entertaining for the audience. So we use a lot of kind of cross genres techniques. So you probably have seen we do quite complex choreography sometimes. And we draw inspiration from all different parts of genres. So we have the classical there, we've got the pop music there, we've got the world music there. But if we were to be classified in one genre, probably classical and electronic is probably where we fit the most. And again, it's really hard to classify us. And so I guess if you were to ask me what the Deep Blue core is, I guess it's to be more of an experience rather than a performance, if that makes sense. And we do that by visual and lighting and the interaction that we do. We developed this program where the audience are encouraged to download this app. And so throughout the show, they actually are interacting with us. And so they can actually also sway the show. Like, for example, we got rid of the traditional paper program. They would download it in their app. And then they can also rate and give reviews and comments of what they like in the piece. And also, they also have the chance of swaying the show, because sometimes we have, we ask the audience, okay, what would you like to hear next? And then we can also control that. And because it's all live and through online interaction program, we can do that. Now that put a lot of pressure for us, the performer on stage, because we've got to be able to kind of put it out of the hat on the switch. But it's a lot of fun. It's challenging. But it's been one of the best experiences that I've ever had as a musician.
Yeah, I bet it definitely sounds like a lot of fun, especially with the whole interactive experience for the audience as well. Yeah, definitely sounds like a very high-tech orchestra, if that's the case.
Yeah.
So just going back to the term that you used earlier on. So you referred to yourself as a cross-genre musician, while you and the orchestras are cross-genre musicians. So what, other than playing just like across different genres and mixing them together, what does this mean to you?
Right. No, I think cross-genre actually to me means, I guess personally, I have to apply this term for me as I experience my own life in Australia, having emigrated from Indonesia. I mean, obviously, culturally, I come from Indonesia, and I was I started the violin quite late. My musical training started when I was 12, and so I wasn't exposed very much to classical music. So all throughout my childhood, I was listening to pop music, and it was later on that I discovered classical music. But I guess in the back of my mind, as much as I enjoy classical music and I have great respect for it, I also like to perform music that I actually enjoy. That is in the pop or electronic world. I think cross-genre for me means that you have to be really versatile. Having that versatility to mix and to kind of not to narrow your options, or to have just one genre where you're specializing in, which is, there's nothing bad with that. And I think, to really master something, I guess you have to be a specialization of, you have to specialize in something. But in my experience, I think it's also being at the edge of the current trend and technology, and seeing what is out there that I can incorporate for myself as a performer. And so as you rightly mentioned, Brian, it's not just simply mixing genres of music, because everyone has been doing that really. But I think it's more like an outlook for me. How else can we look at this classical piece of music? Deep Blue have played pieces like Mahler's Fifth Symphony, and also the Barber's Adagio and Corelli's. So we take very classical music and we reimagine it, and how would someone who is who doesn't know anything about classical music, how can we magnify this classical beautiful classical music in a way that they can understand it, no, in the way that they can consume it, I guess. So how can we make it more relatable? There you go. It was hard for me to arrive there, but finally I did.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
definitely a very interesting take on it. So, so being a cross-genre musician, I take it that you play for, like you mentioned, like the current pop and contemporary side of music, and you also focus on the traditional classical side of things, which is basically the topic for today as well. So, so to you, are there any benefits or disadvantages to focusing entirely on either of these paths?
Yeah, I think to be honest, like I said earlier, I think this crossing of genres has happened actually from the other side a lot more often than from the classical side to the pop. I mean, I can think of so many bands, from the past, even bands like the Beatles, and they've been collaborating with orchestras and wanting to get, I guess, as pop musician and jazz musician, they always try and cross genres. But what I've noticed is that there is actually a resistance often in the classical trained mentality where we're not as ready to cross to their side. In my experience. So I guess that's what my take on that is. But the benefits, I think, with focusing on classical path is, well, it's a very well tested pathways, and it's a less risky pathway because there are, I suppose, avenues and there are protocols that's already set. You go and find a really good teacher, and then you prepare for your excerpts audition, and then you audition as many orchestras as possible, and you try and land that job. So there is a nice security, I suppose, associated with pursuing a traditional classical pathway. The con with that is it is super competitive. So, unless you really are the best of the best, then the likeliness of getting a very secure, stable job, it's quite difficult. And I've experienced that with a lot of my friends as well who graduated with me from university. And, a lot of them pursue the classical career, and it's not always easy. Some of them really do make it, and and it's great. But some of them do really struggle, and so there is also no guarantee, I suppose. That would be one of the con, the uncertainty of it. In the contemporary pathway, I think the pro is being unlimited. Being able to be super creative. Making and shaping your own opportunity, and and really exploring what's there. But of course, that goes hand in hand with, you have to be the type of individual that are self-driven and who are willing to take risks, because if you're not, then you'll end up not doing much, because the nature of a violinist, which are seen often as a classical musician, going to contemporary is not always so obvious. So you do have to put yourself out there. You've got to approach, and you've got to be the one that's making that first move and the approach. So and it's also, so I guess like being able to promote. So I guess the con with pursuing a contemporary pathway as a violinist is, first of all, having to establish that contact, having that type of mentality or personality where, you just give everything a go. And so, I don't know. Some people might argue that's not a con, but I know that it's not for everyone as well.
All right. Well, those are definitely very interesting takes to it. Like, I would just like to add something, just to be like, just to have like some food for thought, based on your answers early on. Because obviously, like the whole contemporary path, like playing pop music and such, isn't exactly like you mentioned for the traditional setting, where it's like, whereas like you have official academies, you have training and such for that. Um, would it be? Do you think it would be possible sometime in the future for maybe schools to be directing their how do I explain it? Directing their courses in such a way where it caters to contemporary players? Do you think that's something that we may see sometime in the future?
I hope so, Brian. I hope so. I think there is the demand for it, and you don't have to search very far to see in the success of bands and string players like the piano guys. I don't know if you've heard of them, yeah, and of course figures like Lindsey Sterling, and and the like. So those are classically trained violinists often, which have crossed that path into the pop or the rock, with great success. And I guess it's really, you are really only limited by your own imagination in that sense. I hope that big establishment like university will take that on board and to say that, hey, there is actually a good career to be carved out of this music industry. There is demand and people like hearing this music. I've heard that, piano guys don't have viewers in the millions. They have, more than, it's in their billions, their viewers. So, they must be doing something right and they must be touching chord with so many different listeners around the world. And so, yeah, I think it should be explored, and I may have even have heard a couple of university which do offer this type of training, but they're all very niche currently still, and they're very few and far between. So I would have loved for them to come on board and see and promote this type of playing. I think it's here to stay, definitely.
Well, thanks for the response to that, Evan. Before we move on forward, we're seeing a few pictures over here. Would you like to elaborate a bit on them? Yeah.
That's right. So, some of the thing that I think crossing genres have given Deep Blue and myself as performer is we are often seen in breaking boundaries, in trying to make connection. And so that actually have worked in favor for our orchestra and our band. Because we incorporate a lot of innovation in our delivery of our concerts from the Australian government. So on the bottom, in front of the Australian Pavilion in the Shanghai World Expo, where we were selected to represent Australia and actually more specifically the state of Queensland for 1 week. So we were flown in there, and we were there to and I think that was such a great honor, especially for me, an immigrant to this country, to then being asked to represent Australia in the area of arts and culture. I think that's just amazing, and I think this type of music have its kind of almost emblematic for this country in Australia. That is, because it's young and it's trying to kind of be on the edge of invention and all of that stuff. So the center picture that you see, that was actually our performance in Kuala Lumpur. Oh. So that's when we played for the Gourmet Food Festival that is held there. And we were lucky enough to be asked to feature in one of the dinner that the Sultan has for that particular night. And then with us sitting on the line, that is on one of the music festivals that perform. And so that's the other things that we do a lot of. We do a lot of big music festivals. And that one there is in Taiwan. The blue looking picture, that one is in Australia in a Woodford Folk Festival. We often collaborate with a lot of folk musicians and a lot of actually currently we're working on a new collaboration with a composer called Karina Bonchek, and she created this show called Song to the Earth, and it uses a lot of nature sound, and she created this soundscape. And then she introduced strings into it. So, she wanted to collaborate with Deep Blue because we are this multi layered orchestra where we memorize all the piece, and she actually installed all this light sculpture on our bodies, and so we have this dangling things coming out as we perform, and we move through the space. And so the idea is that the audience is enveloped by this experience. So yeah, it's all about breaking and delivering music as we love it, but in a new way.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like an interesting concept. I would love to see how that turns out. So when are you guys planning to deliver this? I suppose you guys would have to
so
wait.
Yeah, well, it's as you can imagine, it's a very time-consuming process in putting these shows together. There's many background work that must be done to even get us on stage. The music has to be composed, and then we have to memorize every single note on the page, and then we usually work with a music director, then we work with a choreographer, and then we work with the light designer, and then we work with the costume designer, and then the makeup artist, and then the stage designer. And so there's so many different layers. And so we have a team for about 35 people in here that's working on the background. But our next performance is actually in Hervey Bay in Queensland, is known worldwide as a pathway for the hunchback whale that migrate and rest in there. And so they have a yearly annual festival, and we'll be featuring in that festival, playing as part of the Whale Festival. And we'll be playing a lot of sea sound mixed with strings. So I'm really looking forward on how that one will come together. Yeah, I think also, looking at some of the photos that you've seen here, I think being a cross-genre musician also extend beyond your ability as well. Like a lot of people thinks that playing in the symphony orchestra and then being able to read very well, then you can just go to a musical and perform, but actually they're quite different skill wise, and I guess at its most basic form, I would say that a cross genre violinist is one that's willing to just go beyond their comfort level or comfort area and just push a little bit more. In the photo in front of us, we actually collaborated with an Indian artist. In here, we had a stand artist flown in from India, and she was creating these images on the background as we were performing. And we also collaborated with a tabla player there at the back. And it's been an amazing experience. We have good relationship with people in India. We went and we performed and did a tour there. And we also love playing Bollywood music. So that's another area of genres that we also like to include.
Yeah, it definitely would be a genre on its own, wouldn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I also noticed one of the pictures early on you were walking on stilts. I was wondering why that was in your profile. Why was that part of the profile earlier on? Okay,
by that stage, I asked myself, why stop here? You've already learned the violin. You hang on the ceiling while playing. You got firework coming out of your feet. What else can you do in the meantime? And so Wayne, which is our cellist, was the first of Deep Blue that learned stilt walking. And then he was kind enough to then teach us. So there's about 3 of us now in the orchestra that can walk on still while performing. Was that I think there's that sense of wonder and wow when you come out on stage on a stilt. There's nothing quite because we usually don't perform the whole show on stilt. We will perform them normally, and then one stage, one of us will come out on stilt. And in that moment, you can see, especially in the eyes of the kids, where their eyes just beam open and just like their jaws drop and said, wow, that's just amazing. Yeah, now this photo here is actually with a dear friend of mine, Dummy Im. Now, Dummy is from Korea, and she has actually made quite a successful career in the musical scene of Australia. She released, and she was actually selected to represent Australia in Eurovision 2 years ago, and she enjoys a very successful commercial career here actually, and that was one of the collaboration that I did as a classical violinist. And so these are all the other stuff that I also do when I'm not on stilt or when I'm not flying on the ceiling. I do still practice classically, and that is where I come from. I'm classically trained originally, and and I still have to go back to its most basic thing. I still have to practice my scales and my Bach, because as as string players, it's so difficult, and it's not an instrument that you can just kind of put aside and just I'll come back to it. It does need maintenance.
So then you go back to the roots once in a while, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, you've got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to go back, because I think we have to rush a bit with our questions because we have to move on to the Q&A section soon. So
Sure.
So moving on. So as mentioned earlier on, you are a cross-genre musician which mixes both the traditional and the contemporary paths, correct?
Mm.
So to you, why is it more beneficial to you to be a cross-genre musician as opposed to being one that only focuses on either the traditional or the contemporary paths? Why would you want to be a cross-genre musician?
Yeah, look, I think it's all about versatility. I think for me, it's something that I enjoyed. Okay, so I grew up to the tracks of Vanessa Mae. I'm playing back in the turn of the millennium, and I always wanted to have that. Now, why is it beneficial? I think people, even in the classical world, would admit that sometimes the job of an orchestra, especially, I think 2020 has been really revealing for us all, with COVID, that relying on a concert hall to generate your income and to always rely on a state-funded orchestra in the traditional sense, it may not be there. And I think the reality is, more and more musicians are forced, or classical musicians are forced to kind of look beyond on how to support themselves and how to create a profession out of their career. And one way to do that is to become more versatile and to open yourself up to new experiences where you're not just able to play in a symphony orchestra or chamber music, but you can also say, yes, I can do this musical. And if there's a band, I actually last week there's a Metallica show that I played in, and that was my first time experiencing heavy metal audience. And that was something else. I'm not going to go into that today, but having the ability to kind of cross genre and having the experience, so that the people from the other side also are confident in giving you their platform, to make sure that you're not going to just not know what to do on a stage, for example. So I think it's very important, and I think we do live in an age where more and more we need to have an online presence. And to create a profile for ourselves and video clips like that. And I think one of the best way to do that is by mixing genres. That way you can engage with more audience and be more attractive, I suppose, with a greater section of the audience market. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense though, because it's not like, like you mentioned early on, I suppose it would be like you mentioned early on, I suppose the classical audience would already be sort of there, but it's hard to attract more people without having a bit more novelty, I suppose would be the word. Yeah. All right, well, moving on. So yeah, I think this would be one of our last questions for today. So given the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has severely affected all manner of professions across the world, like you mentioned earlier on, how do you feel musicians can make the most out of this pandemic? Because as you mentioned, the prospect of being a cross-genre musician is this good. So what could they do to help pursue this during this time of isolation?
Yeah, I think people are already doing it. Actually, it's great to see how many orchestra went online. For example, last year, having this the isolated orchestra, where not just orchestra but choirs, they went in there and they went on Zoom and they create this online. And it's amazing to see that actually. And so, I suppose that's the good thing that come out of Zoom, the knowledge that, yes, we may be separate physically, but but we can still achieve this community building essentially through things like the internet. I think if I were to give an advice on how for musicians to go, I suppose, to fare well in the afternoon, but trying to engage with your audience on the internet would be, I think, the best way to do that. To create a video clip perhaps, or to even just have a blog, or even, I see a lot of Instagram violinists these days, and they, actually I share a town and state with the two-set violins. Of course, if you ever heard of them, they have quite a big online following, the two-set violin Brett, and sorry, I've got the and Eddie, and and they live here in Brisbane, and we've crossed paths a number of times. But it's and they've managed to create such a great online community for the string players. So yeah, it's good, and I think that would be the creation of online presence for yourself would be the great thing to do during COVID, I would think.
All right. Well, many thanks for your insight into all this, Evan. I think we have time for one last question before we move on to the Q&A section. So, as you may have heard, the Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra has involved itself in a variety of activities. So, on behalf of the JPO, we would like to ask about your views on the JPO and its activities. Additionally, how would you suggest the JPO and its members further improve itself, other than what you mentioned earlier on regarding improving our online presence?
Well, actually, Brian, I'm shocked on how all the things that you guys do. It's quite amazing, and I don't know how you guys pull that off. I think JPO is doing already such a great job in engaging with the community. I love especially what you're doing with the underprivileged, training people. I mean, that's not something that that everyone can lay claim to, and I think that's such a great thing. I have to be truthful and modest in saying that I'm scratching my head, not knowing what else I can give you as an advice that you haven't done already, actually, and it's great. Online present, yes, of course. Having a clip for YouTube, that seems to be, from my own experience, the best way of engaging and to put yourself out there. Because pictures are great, but where people really do get absorbed by the clip. Now, for the students of JPO and who is affiliated with your orchestra, I would continue to. I would maybe give them advice to keep dreaming, because there is no no limit of what is possible these days with your music. If you ask me as a kid, would all of these things that I've achieved be possible? I would have never thought in a million years that I'll be able to do the things that I can do and make a career out of it. But it's been quite an eye-opening. And so keep on practicing. Okay, you can't neglect good pitch, good rhythm, and your teacher and conductor will help you and achieve that. So, it's I think all of the glitz and glamour is one thing, but down at the core, we all still have to play the right notes in tune and in time.
Yeah, that's very true. Thanks again for your words, Evan. I'm very sure that our president Yap-Ming is definitely happy to hear you say all that. So yeah, thanks for that.
No, you're most welcome.
All right. So with that, I think we'll have to move on to the Q&A section. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, please leave your questions down in the live chat down below if you would like to ask Evan any questions. Before that, we do have a few questions coming through in Zoom chat. So one of them would be from an anonymous viewer. So they're saying, in your opinion, and based off your own audience's reception, which musical path has had more appeal with respect to the audience? Do more people prefer listening to traditional classical music, or do they seem to prefer contemporary style music? Or being a cross-genre musician, have you seen a better reception in the cross-genre genre?
Yeah, you know what? It's I would say they're about the same. If you're asking me how does the audience react, I think the love of music in both genres are just as much. the appeal, I mean, obviously it has different appeal, and I would maybe link it would, if I can draw an analogy to food, maybe that would be the best way to look at that topic. I think some people do prefer certain food, and some other people would prefer this food. It's not to say that this, the people who fans with this food is better than this one here. They're just different, and they're to be consumed in different occasion. And just because you like this one doesn't mean you can't like this one, and vice versa. We found that our audience, they are staunch classical traditionalists that would view what we do as something that marking around with tradition, which they disapprove of what we do sometimes, But I think in the general public, the greatest interaction has been with children who's learning musical instrument themselves, when they finally see, oh wow, just because I play the cello or the double bass or the viola or the violin, it doesn't mean that I only have to do classical music, that there is other music beyond classical that I can also explore. And so I enjoy seeing that and relating to kids in that way, in making them realize that, yes, just because all throughout history this is what violinists and string players have done, it doesn't mean that you also have to only do it that way.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. That's a very good response there, because like you said, we are sort of just limited by our own imaginations, I suppose. Yeah, thanks for that. So moving on. So the next person is saying, hello. How about the musicians themselves? Based off the pros and cons you mentioned earlier, which music path seems to be the one that most musicians lean towards?
Yeah, with my experience in Deep Blue in particular, we do tend to attract musicians which are already exploring the other side of classical. So I suppose if you ask me which, the people who I interact with, do tend to lean towards the contemporary compared to the classical. But that's not to say that we don't get a lot out of the performing of classical pieces. As I mentioned, I think playing the string instrument, it's so hard to separate ourselves completely from the classical tradition. I don't think it's possible, to be honest. I mean, there's so much great masterpieces that has been created that it would be, it wouldn't be right to ignore that world completely. I don't think you can. Once you understand the complexity of Bach and the intricacy of Paganini, or the tune of Vivaldi, you can't ignore that. And in fact, I think that's not what cross-genre musicians are aiming to do. I don't think. I think our aim is to, how do we take this great music from the past, and how do we make it more relatable by crossing the genres? So I would maybe see it that way more.
Well, that's definitely a very interesting take on it. So yeah, thanks for that, Evan. So moving on, we do have another question coming in. So this person is asking, as a teacher yourself, which music path do you focus on for your students? If you're trying to prepare them to be cross-genre musicians themselves, what has been your approach to doing so?
I tell them to do all their grades. To learn their scales, to sit their exams. Because and that's the thing. I think in life, if you want to do things well, there's no shortcut. You've got to do it. And unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, depending on where you look at it, the string instrument is very, very demanding. And so there is a danger, I think, with an instrument like the violin. I mean, there are some really great bluegrass player, country player, jazz player that have nothing to do with classical training. But I think the classical pathway still offer the best educational process that is more accessible to most people, more so than all the other one. I would say that if you want to specialize as a bluegrass fiddler or a country fiddler, you really have to live and breathe in that community and also grown up and be part of your everyday life. And that is not always accessible for a lot of people. So to me, and for my own student, and student who have made it clear to me that that's the pathway that they want to pursue, I said, well, yes, I can help you. I can get you there. I can show you the way, but you still have to sit this grade 5 exam, grade 6 exam, grade 7 exam. Just to cover all of the technical basis, because yes, you are playing, and you're using technique that might not be traditional, but at the core of it, we still often refer back, and we, one of the fundamental skills like music reading and stuff like that. It just makes the process of learning music a lot quicker, and as opposed of someone who just based, for example, just by hearing. If you were asked to memorize 2 hours worth of show, that would have taken a lot longer than someone who has been classically trained.
That is true. Yeah, I suppose that would be one of the difficulties in what we were mentioning early on, like having just a purely contemporary based music course, something like that. So yeah,
that's right. I think it has to be integrated. I don't think you can separate it well at this level. I mean, or maybe someone will invent a way, that's completely brand new. Who knows? I would love to know what that would be though. But for the time being, I think classical pathway, in the beginning at least, still offers the most.
That's true. Okay, with that, I think we have one last question before we have to end for tonight. So yeah, this question is also coming from one of our viewers, anonymous viewers. So what has the Deep Blue Orchestra been doing amidst the pandemic? Have you guys stick to online performances, or have you guys already actually gone back to live performances? And
so we have recently, I think we're fortunate to be in Australia where we are, luckily the outbreak here is not as severe as other part of the world, and they've been managed to isolate and close the border quite early on. So I think we enjoyed quite a relatively short amount of lockdown, and especially in the state of Queensland, we do have almost one of the least number of lockdown. I mean, except for smaller states like Hobart and Northern Territory, which hardly get any. But and because of that, we've actually done a couple of concerts already. I've done a summer school concert this January, in fact, where we work with 35 kids in their holiday program, and they came in and they learned. And actually, so the Young Blue program, the kids come in and they've learned and they create their own show in 5 days. And so we've been able to put that together, and we're looking forward to the Well Festival, as I mentioned earlier. Last year has been, there wasn't too much because, there was a couple of concerts that had to be canceled and a couple of overseas engagement that had to be canceled. And we totally understand that, and we're okay with that. And we've taken the time to kind of question and restructure our organization and see how can we administer the orchestra better, how can we manage the orchestra better. And so we look internally during that time and see, how can we plan for when the world is open again. But in terms of performance, we did put a stop into it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because I was thinking if you guys actually did go back to like maybe online performances, how would you be able to properly capture all the choreography and their visual effects and such? Yeah,
we could have done it, and I think if this was our second year of lockdown, then we would have definitely have created something like that. I guess back last year, as it was happening, it's so hard to know. What happens next, is it will we do this concert, will that not concert? And so it was really hard, I think, in our organization in last year to really have a clear plan. We do have a clear plan now for 2021, and I'm really excited for it.
That's good. That's good for you guys. I'm glad that you guys are slightly sort of tending back to the norm there then. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, with that, I think we've run out of time for tonight. So yeah, once again, thank you so much, Evan, for all your responses. Sorry everyone, but we are coming to the end of tonight's broadcast. We would like to remind everyone that our JPO family program will be broadcasted twice a week until further notice. So that's every Wednesday and every Sunday. Wednesday and Sunday night Malaysia time, I suppose. And join us next time with our next guest, who will be revealed at a later date. More details on this can be found on our Facebook page. A video recording of tonight's broadcast will also be uploaded onto the YouTube channel, along with the past webinars and the soon-to-be broadcasted interviews. So feel free to share the Zoom webinar registration link, the JPO YouTube channel, and the JPO Facebook page with your friends and family. For our YouTube audience, if you are enjoying our program, please show your support to us by pressing the like and subscribe button down below. You guys have been an amazing audience, and we from the JPO family wishes that everyone stays safe and healthy as we continue to face this crisis together. I will now be leading a prayer to end tonight's program. So please pray in whatever faith you believe in regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. We pray that everyone in the world continues to stay strong in surviving through these difficult times, and that a solution to the virus will soon be found. We pray that governments across the world continue to improve upon their efforts and decision-making so as to protect their people and curb the spread of the virus. We pray for the safety and well-being of everyone working as we enter March and as parts of the world continue to face new surges of cases. We pray for the continued safety and morale of the frontliners who are risking their lives so that they may continue to provide for those in need. Well, with that, once again, thank you to everyone joining us tonight, and thank you, Evan, for joining us. Well, good night, and we hope to see you all again next time. See you.